Sorry, Russ, we missed what you said because I turned the recording on.
I'm here.
Okay. So it looks like we have strong representation on the webinar and lots of people on the phone. So we're going to go on and get started. We have folks from the central office here in the conference room in Silver Spring. It's a gorgeous spring afternoon, and courtesy of Laurie Wooden, we have tulips on this opening slide. Thank you, Laurie, for that artistic rendering to make us remind us of it's almost April, which means that we have a new fiscal year about ready to start, and we have a budget to guide us. And so what we're going to be doing is talking about the budget, both programmatically as well as financially, covering a lot of the highlights, and pretty much what we did at our board meeting just about 10 days ago in New Orleans. And we're going to start off with Russ providing a report that he gave to the board called CEO Headlines. And Russ, you're on.
Sounds good. So if we could go to the CEO Headlines slide. Folks, I'm taking this call outside the office, so I'm going to have to prompt when we need a slide change. So if we could stay with the CEO Headlines slide, let me make a few introductory remarks here. So this was part of a presentation that I shared with the board on Saturday morning at our board meeting in New Orleans. There were 4 segments to the original CEO Headlines report. This focuses on one, which is providing a little bit of background on the travel climate that we find ourselves in. And the reason why this was important to the board, and I wanted to share this with you today, was that this has shaped the budgeting to some extent, and it certainly shapes the outlook for the next fiscal year. For those of you that participated in my monthly call in mid-February, at that point I reviewed some early observations on the operating climate. We had experienced the first of 2 travel bans. We had experienced an inaugural address that some felt was not welcoming. And we had experienced during the month of January a slight decline in hostel overnights after a year of modest growth. An airline survey at the time that I cited found a 17% decline in reservation inquiries to USA from foreign destinations. There were 5 cancellations immediately after the announcement of the first travel ban, totaling 2,100 overnights. And the conclusion of the brief remarks was that really, despite the mixed record, we really couldn't couldn't determine any conclusions at this point because of the millennial resiliency and the belief in the millennial urge to travel. The question at that point was where would they travel, not whether they would travel in the upcoming summer months. So if we could go to the next slide. Here are some firmer statistics about the relationship between the travel ban and travel booking patterns. We see that on January 27th, the initial travel ban was announced. The following 6 days, there was a 6.5% decline in international reservations to the United States. On February 4th, the court intervened, and for the next 12 days, there was a 2.2% increase. And then once new restrictions were announced as forthcoming, a 4% decline, which suggests that there is certainly some considerable sensitivity within the international market to both the travel restrictions and the feeling of welcomeness to the United States. Next slide, please. This slide is entitled Recent Changes in Key Lodging Benchmarks, and this suggests some optimism. So we see the change in occupancy, the change in daily rate, and the change in demand for economy hotels within the United States. Now, obviously, this does not exactly mirror our segment, but it's used as one of several benchmarks to get an idea as to how our projections mirror or align with economy hotel projections, and you'll see that later in this presentation. But the good news is, in the December to February 2017 edition of this econometrics report, we actually see a weaker projected performance than in the report for March through May of 2017. So in March and May of 2017, and this was released in late February, we see a positive change in occupancy. We see a higher change in average rate and a higher change in demand, all of which are very good things when we think about the future. Next slide, please. Then we look at our own overnight trends, and we see a mixed report. We see that in April through June, we had a relatively weak operating period compared to the previous year. This compares overnights in our network to overnights of the previous year. Then in September, in July through September, and October through December, we see strengthening. Then in January, it's a modest decline, an uptick in February, and for March through March 1st, and actually this is through March 27th, we see a 0.2 point decline. And the March numbers exclude Santa Monica because of the renovations. So I certainly we can say that since the first travel announcement, the overnights are mixed, which then if we could lead to the next slide, what others are saying, this is where most analysts are at this point. This is a quote from New York City and Company. While we're not seeing impact quite yet, we're worried. This is a critical time of the year when many foreign travelers are booking their foreign holiday. People have choices. We could go to the next slide. A lot of research has been done on millennial travelers. These are some of the adjectives that are used to describe millennial travelers. And the point that I made to the board was that really the question for the upcoming travel season is which of these adjectives will rule. Is it people who are risk-taking, inquisitive, and fun-loving, or is it people that are primarily idealistic, culturally aware, and principled? Personal values will shape people's travel decisions in the upcoming summer. The question is, what will be the overall impact to the United States? Next slide, please. So this is a slide that should say the proposed fiscal year 18-20 budget does not seek to predict what the eventual impact of a downturn in international travel might be, but rather seeks to be prudent within the framework of existing forecasts and experience. So really, what we tried to deliver to the board, and I want to thank everyone for their role in responsibly delivering a budget that the board felt was prudent, was responsible, and gives us the room to maneuver during a very uncertain travel climate. The objective was exactly that. We wanted the room to maneuver. We wanted the room to be able to manage the organization during what may turn out to be rather turbulent times. Next slide, please. So there are 4 slides that I'm going to share with you, all related to the notion of coming up with a budget that was fiscally prudent with room to maneuver. The first slide shows the fiscal year 18 target that was set in last year's budget. So we have a fiscal year that begins on April 1st of each year and ends the following March. So when we talk about fiscal year 17 is about to end on March 31st, 2017. Fiscal year 18 begins in 3 days, and ends March 31st, 2018. So in last year, in our 3-year budget, the second year of the 3-year budget projected a bottom line operating income of $1.33 million. The board has used the second year operating income as a benchmark for our budget the following year. So under that sort of rule or discipline, we would have needed to deliver a $1.33 million bottom line in fiscal year 18. What we suggested to the board was prudent, is that we deliver a fiscal year 2018 bottom line of $716,000, which in fact we did. And the difference between the 1.33 million and the 716,000 is the difference in the Santa Monica revenue loss from renovation. So essentially, we backed out that revenue loss, which was not projected to be in its entirety in fiscal year 18, and arrived at our budget target of $716,000. Again, the notion is to show the bank some stability and some rationale for any change in our bottom line target from year to year. Next slide, please. This should be labeled slide number 2. Hostile revenues are projected conservatively compared to typical benchmarks. There's a lot of numbers on this slide, and typically this and basically what this does is go back to my earlier point that it's always helpful to have an external comparison to benchmark one's own results. And what we've used historically is the economy hotel forecast of a highly respected econometrics firm. Typically, we do better than the economy hotel forecast. So you see that in fiscal year 14, 15, and 16, we did 2.8 percentage points better than the economy hotel sector. And projected this year, we're projected to do 2.7 percentage points better. In 18, 19, and 20, we're only projecting to do 1/10 of a point better. Again, the idea here is looking externally, we wanted to be on the conservative side of growth for the sector. Next slide, please. So this slide relates to the cash position of the organization if things go as budgeted. So the proposed budget, and you'll see this shortly, the proposed budget generates a modest amount, $1 million increase in cash. It's not as much as the board wanted to see. It's not as much as the bank wanted to see. But it seemed realistic given the times that we're in. The board would have accepted a $0 cash change. Typically, we're in the $2 million range in terms of a cash target. What you see in this slide is the impact of a 1%, 2%, 3% decline in revenues. So what this does is it gives us the ability to absorb a 2% decline in hostile revenues and still end up at a break-even cash position. Now, this may seem like a series for some of rather arcane sort of financial measures, but for the board and for the bank, these 3 items ended up being quite important, as is the fourth, which shows the fiscal year 18 budget as passed. I said there's typically a 3-year budget. So it shows the results for fiscal year 18, 19, and 20. And you see that the net income is $1,716,000 in 18, $451,000 in 19, and $964,000 in 20. I think there's a general consensus amongst all that in fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20, we need to have a larger net income. And the idea here is that the structural changes that are being noodled through by La Piana will find some savings both through additional effectiveness and additional efficiencies. If we could go to the next slide, I'm almost done. So the next slide is titled HIUSA as an Educational Organization. We had some work done for us about a year ago related to our tax-exempt status. And these 5 activities are the pillars of our tax-exempt status. One is all about, through the hostel stay, offering the opportunity for young people to interact with each other, offering activities and guided programs that facilitate that interaction. But there are 4 other pillars that we need to be actively addressing. The second is conducting educational programs in the area of cultural, environmental, and travel education. The third is offering travel scholarships and grants to youth demonstrating financial need. The fourth is all about community service, fostering community service. We do that through the Great Hostel Give Back and other programs. And then fifth is all about environmental sustainability. So the challenge and the opportunity in this budget is all about balancing these 5 while keeping aware of the operating climate we're in and the need for all of us that we run a fiscally prudent organization. And with that, Greg, I'm going to put myself on mute and turn it back to you guys.
Thanks, Russ. No, back. So this is a presentation that we gave on Saturday afternoon to the board in New Orleans 2 Saturdays ago. Russ's presentation was in the morning. It provided great context for where we are as an organization and the market we're dealing with. And then in the afternoon, we had this presentation. And I will tell you that it was the day after St. Patrick's Day, so instead of tulips, they were looking at shamrocks. And it was quite beautiful, also care of Laurie Wooden. Next slide. So what we're going to do is tell you about the goals that drove us through this entire budget process. Then we're going to talk about what we accomplished through this budget. And then finally, we're going to go over the numbers, both in terms of capital expenditures as well as the operating budget. But these were the goals that really drove us throughout the budget process, and it really, it really underscores a lot of the things that Russ was saying. First of all, to balance high aspirations of the organization, and I think when we walk through what has been accomplished in this budget, you'll see that, but also that we've done it in the context of our history and also looking at where the market is today. As Russ said, cash flow is extremely important. It's important to the board, it's important to our lenders, and it's important to us also because it provides an operating cushion, and that's always important to know. As Russ said, we use very prudent growth assumptions for ADR, occupancy, and for overnights. I think you'll see that later on in the presentation. And surely we are investing in mission, hostels, travel scholarships, education, as well as staff salaries, making sure that we are being market competitive in terms of our wages, particularly focused on our frontline staff. You'll see a chart in a few minutes where we talk about how we're investing in current facility needs, but also new hostel development. It was exciting to be in New Orleans, and if you're on the staff meeting next Thursday, you'll see some photos of it. It's going to be a great hostel opening in about a year. We are definitely investing in technology upgrades. We'll talk about that in just a moment. We're budgeting within the context of our priorities, and as Russ said, we want to always be prepared in case there is a marketplace downturn. Next slide. So what does this budget accomplish for HIUSA? We're going to look at it under a number of headings: staff, technology, programs, hostels, and also financial goals. In terms of staff, I think it's important to note that staff compensation and benefits comprises 53% of our operating expenses. That's pretty significant, and it's not surprising for a nonprofit organization. As we have in recent years, and we are throughout this 3-year planning period, maintaining a 3% merit salary pool for all staff. You'll be hearing about the details of that in the next week, and those will be effective back to April 1. We're also going to be making additional adjustments, again, focused on frontline staff in certain markets where compensation surveys that we're undertaking currently indicate a need, and those will be effective July 1. We've also decided to convert 3 fixed holidays, the day before Christmas, or Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, and also the day after Thanksgiving. We're going to convert those into floating personal days. You can choose to use them as they have been in the past around those holidays, but you can also choose to use them at any other time during the year. And again, we'll be sending out some details about that. This budget also invests in staff development. We're going to be launching a second phase of intercultural training. You're going to be hearing about an international exchange program where staff will be able to apply to actually work and stay for a period in a hostel in several countries that we work with other national associations. And then they will send staff here. Servant leadership, we have a major initiative going on right now. We're going to determine how to execute that throughout the organization, and there'll be some training involved. And we're continuing the tuition reimbursement program that we started just a few years ago. Next, moving to technology. The big goal for this year is to complete the GuestCentrix PMS installation. This is going to be exciting. It'll be a game changer with all hostels on one business platform. That's pretty amazing. And right now, Michael, we're in 11 hostels and working really well.
13,
excuse me. And rolling out to a few more hostels, hopefully later in the summer. We're going to be launching our own booking engine. It's called Boomworks. That's another Australian product. We know it works well with GuestCentrix. And eventually, later in the year, it will take on all the bookings through HIUSA.org, which means that we won't be paying commissions on all those bookings. And the more that we can direct to that, the better we're going to be. We're moving forward the Salesforce integration to reduce data entry time, but also increase reporting accuracy. We're going to be building a new hostel e-commerce website. I think some of the planning is about ready to get going on that, and that's going to be really exciting. And we're also going to be launching a new department that focuses completely on systems applications development, Salesforce integration, membership, resource development, etc. So now I'm going to turn it over to Helmut. Helmut, are you with us in San Francisco? Star 6, Helmut.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I am in San Francisco, where we have our national sales meeting going on at the Northwest office. And I want to take you through some of the highlights we're planning on doing in the programs division, engagement and education, development, and hostel services. We just had a meeting in Chicago as a follow-up to our programs summit in Richmond to come up with ways to integrate engagement and hostel operations together. And Richard and Javier and the teams are working on a follow-up document on that. We had about 16 engagement and general managers on that meeting to help us with that. In engagement, we are establishing metrics to measure the impact. We are already reporting on our activities and participation. Now we're measuring impact over the short, medium, and long term as well. Very exciting community hosteling fund and our scholarships, as Russ mentioned, with our nonprofit status. We are expanding that to 98 scholarships this year, 17 more than last year, and working on the program to also take that possibly nationwide. The United Nations World Tourism Organization is having the International Year of Sustainable Tourism, and Zach and the team, together with Lori and her team, are working on some key programs that we will do as part of that year. And also in engagement and education, we are piloting a U.S. version of IOU Respect. As most of you know, IOU Respect is done in conjunction with Germany, France, Lebanon, Egypt, and Tunisia once a year. And really getting people together from different backgrounds, and we are piloting that in the Northwest and in the Southwest right now to make that program ours, especially important in today's environment. Next slide, please, Michael. Then on the operations side, I mean, we are investing $18 million in capital improvements and development over the next 3 years. That includes large projects as our dorm room of the future, new development in New Orleans, expansion in Santa Monica, and that is above and beyond our usual 3% reserve, as you can see. The dorm room of the future, or dorm room 2020, that concept is being worked on right now by Aaron and Javier to really upgrade our dorm room experience and also affect our dorm scores. The technology, it will really help us to be more efficient when it comes to PMS, Salesforce reporting and all that, to make some decisions on the information that we are collecting. And those, that work team and the software will help us with that. And we just had our board meeting in New Orleans. That is going to be a very, very exciting project, about 240 beds that we will open next year in spring. And together with that, our San Francisco lease is being negotiated right now with the owners, and we have major improvements going on in Santa Monica. We are installing air conditioning and renovating the bathrooms, but we are also planning to add 21 private dorm rooms to that hostel as well, starting later on this upcoming fiscal year. And another priority of ours is also to go and establish some fundraising around those projects, and New Orleans will be an excellent example for that. To help us raise funds around all of the projects that we do. Now I will go and give it over to Lori for the next slide.
Oh, sorry.
Try again.
Okay, thank you, Michael. We have a little mute-unmute thing going on here. Sorry, guys. So what does this budget accomplish for HIUSA in terms of our financial goals? Within this budget, we are able to focus, we're able to really respond to what's going on in our marketplace with our competitors, with those who are with us and those who are planning to come in, by strengthening our marketing efforts. In marketing, we're really excited about this. We see our role certainly in supporting our programs and our hostels, but also importantly in helping to drive the revenue performance of the organization. So we'll see a sustained marketing campaign throughout the year, using new video development, We are going to bring on a digital marketing agency to assist us with some key elements that will also help us improve revenue performance. So, for example, taking a look at the strategy of our various web properties. We've got almost a dozen websites as an organization, so really figure out how to best maximize those opportunities. The SEO performance of those websites, so when people are looking for us, they can find us easily at the top of the page just underneath the ads, because that's where our target audience tends to look, and also to continue to help us be successful in the digital space. I did have the pleasure at the board meeting of sharing with the board the good work that Layla and the team have been doing in social media and the success that we've had there so far. And so we'll have some additional help to help us continue to build to the next level. We work very well with bloggers across the board, hostel stays, program supports. We also have a number of campaigns we're working on with very influential bloggers to help us, again, drive traffic to our website, drive revenue for the organization. And we'll want to continue to work on revenue management that helps us optimize our revenue performance while maintaining our goal of affordability. We're also going to be optimizing our resource development structure. We have a number of longtime supporters that we will continue to work with in terms of developing major gifts as well as bequest opportunities. And of course, as a result of all of the work that we've talked about so far, as an organization, we will meet our board and lender expectations for strong bottom line and cash flow results. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Mike to share the numbers.
Thanks, Lori. So just two quick slides here. The first one is just to give everyone a sense of the numbers related to our capital investments, and Helmut touched on the total number earlier, which is in the bottom right-hand corner of $18.1 million over 3 years. It's quite substantial and significant, and is a good bit more than we probably have ever had in a three-year budget cycle, and that really has to do with the major hostel development projects in the middle of the page. But just going up to the top, our hostel capital investments, board guidance and governance, and just prudent planning, which is also typical of hotels, is that you want to have a certain percentage of your revenues put back into capital improvements, sort of the ongoing, the more routine, whether it's replacing a roof, replacing major mechanical systems, doing a common room redos, or dorm room renovations, new beds, et cetera, that type of thing. So we want to make sure that we have money in the budget every year to accomplish that. We typically are around $2 million or a little under $2 million year over year, in order to make sure that we have planned appropriately to cover all hostels for those needs. And then in the major hostel development projects line, I'm pretty excited about this. I know a lot of people in the organization are excited, and I think everyone will be excited about what we're doing here. Helmut touched on Santa Monica. This FY18 budget is primarily 3 floors of renovations, complete renovations at the Santa Monica hostel. It includes taking floor by floor offline for a month at a time for the next 6 months, doing everything from new bunks to mattresses to painting, flooring, installing HVAC, which wasn't there. It's going to help with our guest satisfaction scores. And so that's going to respond to that, and then also just make this an even more world-class facility than it already is. And it also includes some money to get started then, very quickly after that, on the 21-bed expansion at Santa Monica, where we'll be building up from the ground up, sort of, I believe, in the center of the building or thereabouts. And that's going to take about a year to do and take up most of fiscal 19, and hopefully allow those beds to then become online in fiscal 20. And that's what you see in FY19, is the continuation then and completion of capital spending for the Santa Monica private rooms that we're going to be doing. FY18 also includes about $600,000 towards the New Orleans hostel. We'll need to outfit that with all the FF&E. This is a hostel that we're going to open without owning the building, but we'll have a very long-term lease, and it allows us, as soon as the builder's done building it, for us to have a period of time to get in and install everything, and then start to run that hostel as soon as that's ready to go and everything's installed. And then in FY20, the number contemplates putting in dollars into the San Francisco downtown hostel to get renovations started there, primarily the taking over of Cafe Mason space and adding footprint to the building there, and then really building out sort of the ground floor level, see what people see from the street level, and common space area for us to work with. Now, obviously, we can't accomplish, and then of course the enterprise level capital are the things that we're doing here through the central office in continuing with PMS, with Salesforce systems, website redesign, and implementation. So those are critically important as well. We obviously we don't have $18.1 million of cash. That's a pretty big number, so we obviously have to go out and get loans to do that, and that is why we talk a lot about not just what the board is looking for, but also our lenders are looking for. We've developed some pretty, we're starting to get some longer term relationships with some existing banks, and they're getting very comfortable with how we operate and how we're fiscally responsible, and are very willing to provide us loans at good rates and good terms. So that's how we're going to do all of this capital. It is some of our own money. It's some restricted funds that we have sitting on the sidelines right now, but then it's also a fair amount of lending, which we can support, and you'll see in the next slide, through the revenues that we're bringing into the organization. Michael, next slide. So this then is on the revenue and expense side, the operating income side, and our cash flow. You can see that let me just tell you what happens in sort of quickly 18 to 19 to 20. In FY18, we're getting started with some costs for New Orleans to open up, a pre-opening cost, but the hostel's not open yet. In FY19, that reflects a full year of the New Orleans hostel being open, coming in roughly at break even, but it does add a little over $2.5 million of revenue, but also adds the same amount to expenses. And then starting in FY20, that picture gets a little better with New Orleans. It starts producing more bottom line revenues in excess of the expenses. But in addition, FY20 is when we would hopefully be on target to have the Santa Monica Tower expansion completed, and those revenues being reflected in FY20, and that's why we're able to increase our operating income starting in FY20 with those 21 beds. The other thing that is impacting us a little bit in 18 is because we have the beds offline in Santa Monica for this first phase of renovations to floors 2, 3, and 4, we lose about $500,000 or so of revenues that we would have otherwise had if we were operating the Santa Monica hostel at full capacity. So that's why you see the net income and both the operating income fairly stable in 18 and 19, not too much change, and then 20 generally starting to increase because we have better results projected for New Orleans after an initial year of startup and operations, and then also the Santa Monica Tower 21 private room bed revenues coming in. The cash is what we actually produce each year if these budgets hold to the numbers that we have in here. So FY18 would mean that we would increase our cash by $1 million. FY19 would increase by another $1.8 million, and FY20 by $2.2 million. Again, that is good. That helps us have some options about what we do with some of these more significant hostel development capital expenditures. How much do we want to lend? How much do we want to use of our own cash? We can have some flexibility there. And the board and of course the lenders like to see us having positive cash flow results for that reason, and making sure we have enough cushion on hand if there are any significant downturns in travel markets. And then the cash flow to debt service is just a calculation that is a metric that banks use, that organizations use, to make sure that the cash flow that's coming into the organization can not only support the debt service, both the interest and the principal that's required to be paid to our lenders, but also then have money left over to do other things. Those other things are put back into our hostels for capital expenditures, and also secure some money year over year going forward to build investments and reserves. We're required to be at about a 1.25, so anytime you get above that number, it's a good thing. Anytime you get below that number, it's not a good thing. So we're well above that number and increasing year over year, which is also very positive for us.
Thanks, Mike. So we'll turn it back over to Russ for this final slide. Russ?
Sure. So we're on the Vision 2020 slide now. And Greg will share this with you. There's going to be a budget narrative that's posted on the intranet that will give you details not only about the individual work plans of the various departments, a little bit of more detail behind the various budget line items, but also a competitive sort of analysis of where the market is and where we see the market going. If one thinks about the first part of this presentation and then looks at the various activities that we've got on the docket for this year and the next 3 years, the fact of the matter is we're trying to accomplish a lot. We're being very aggressive in a very uncertain environment. And for those of you who feel that way, it's the reason why at the beginning of the presentation, I wanted to emphasize that we have built in various means of responsibly pulling back if, in fact, the travel market should soften. The fact of the matter is that we are, at this point in our organization's history, we are uniquely positioned to grow. We've got the relationships with the bankers. We've started to deliver on the mission aspirations that are beginning to motivate not only our donors, but also the business relationships we have. Our lenders now view us increasingly as a organization worthy not only for its financial statements, but for the work that we do. And so our goal is to take advantage of this opportunity to build HIUSA into the organization that we aspired to with unification. And if the market should turn south, then we will make adjustments as necessary. Hopefully everyone's familiar with Vision 2020. It talks to our hostels, it talks to experiential learning, it talks to recognition within wider society. It talks about a volunteer presence and a program presence across the United States, and it talks about an advocacy function. Those of you who were at the last year's NAM meeting, I presented a report card in terms of my view as to how we were doing in each of those 5 elements. There will be a similar report card presented at this year's NAM. It shows progress. We're certainly not there yet. It shows progress. I want to thank everyone who participated in the budget process, trying to balance the various priorities given the unique travel climate we find ourselves in was not easy. I'm confident that this is a responsible budget from both a business standpoint as well as a mission standpoint. And Greg, we'd welcome questions now or submitted via email later on. I think the questions are important, so I would like to encourage questions again, either now or via email, so we can answer them at a future teleconference.
Great, thanks, Russ. And thanks, Helmut, Laurie, and Mike. So as Russ mentioned, we do have a budget narrative that will be posted on the intranet no later than Friday. Also, all of you who participated in the budget process, tomorrow you'll get an email that the SharePoint site is accessible again, and you can review the budgets for FY18. And also this presentation will be posted on the internet tomorrow, and you can hear and watch it again. Or you can tell folks who didn't get to see it that they have an opportunity to watch it and listen to it. So with that, if you have a question now, just identify yourself and tell us what your question is. We've got maybe 15 minutes for that. If people have questions. And as Russ said, you can also send us questions by email, particularly maybe after you read the budget narrative. And remember to star 6 to unmute yourself if you're out on the line and you have a question. So I will open it up.
Hey, Greg, this is Molly out in San Francisco.
Oh, Molly.
Hi. Thank you guys so much for all your work on our budgets. My main question you just answered, so we'll have access to our budget starting tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I'm just curious, I know this process was definitely much less painful than last year, which I appreciate. Thank you very much. I would still like to offer some feedback about the timeline especially, and I'm just wondering if we'll be discussing this at NAM or if there's any other forum for trying to offer some information about the way we experience the budget process from the hostel side of things, and if there's ways to improve that timeline.
Right. So we will have a discussion in Victoria at NAM. So please be thinking about that.
Okay, so that'll be the place to ask us.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad. But if you have thoughts before that, Molly, please go on and share them, and others of you as well. I'm glad to see that it wasn't as painful, Molly.
Much improved. Thank you very much.
So anyone else? Remember, if you have a question, star 6 to unmute. Okay.
Greg, this is Mike. I just have a thank you. I neglected to just officially thank Kevin, first of all, Dixon, who's in the finance department, who really, headed up the coordination of all the files and the SharePoint, and I can't tell you how many times he pulled files down and reloaded and version after version. So, and it has just been terrific throughout the process. But I also wanted to, as a reminder, thank again Jim Rudinger and Eric Chalmers, and I don't know if I'm missing anybody else, in particular, Michael Corcoran also for creating SharePoint and having that, because I think that made a big difference. I think I've gotten good feedback that SharePoint was a good way to utilize the files and manage everything. And Jim and Eric were instrumental in the early stages, in particular in developing the new spreadsheet and using metrics and all of that. So just wanted to thank everybody for that. I really wanted to do that.
Great. Thanks, Mike. So any other questions? And again, particularly after you read the budget narrative, there may be other questions that occur to you. Feel free to send them to me, to Russ, or to anyone else on our team who spoke today. And I'm not going to sit here waiting for many more unless someone does have a question. Hearing none, then we will welcome them at some other time, and certainly for the managers when we get together in Victoria. So thanks, everybody, for participating today.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.